Think about the last time you were stressed. Maybe it was money. Maybe a relationship falling apart. Maybe your job or your health or some argument you replayed 14 times in the shower. Something that kept you up at night. Something that sat in your chest like a stone. Now here is a question that might sound absurd. What if that problem did not actually exist? Not that the situation was not real. It was. The bills were real. The argument was real. But the problem, the suffering, the tightness, the story your mind built around it. What if that was manufactured entirely inside your own head? What if you have never, in your entire life, had a single problem in the present moment? Only situations. That is the argument at the center of one of the most influential books on human consciousness ever written. And by the end of this, you might not be able to argue with it. The book is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It has sold over 10 million copies worldwide. It has been translated into more than 50 languages. Oprah Winfrey called it one of the most transformative books she has ever read. And it was written by a man who spent 2 years sitting on park benches in a state of bliss after nearly ending his own life. Now, whether you pick this up because you are into mindfulness or because you are curious about why so many high performers swear by this book, or because you have just been feeling a low hum of anxiety that never quite goes away, this is for you. Over the next hour, I will walk you through every key idea in The Power of Now. Not the watered-down version, not the greeting card quotes, the actual framework, what Tolle discovered, how he explains the mechanics of human suffering, and most importantly, the specific practices he offers to break free from it. Some of what you hear will sound obvious. Some of it will sound radical. And at least one idea in this book will probably change the way you experience the rest of your day. Let us start with the night that started everything. Chapter 1. The night everything changed. It is the early hours of the morning. A man in his late 20s is lying in bed in a dark room in London. He has woken up again, as he does most nights, gripped by a feeling of absolute dread. But tonight, it is worse than it has ever been. The silence of the room feels hostile. The vague outlines of the furniture in the darkness feel alien. The distant sound of a passing train feels meaningless, like evidence of a universe that does not care whether he exists. He has lived in a state of almost continuous anxiety for as long as he can remember. Periods of suicidal depression come and go. He is educated. He has studied at the University of London and Cambridge. He has all the things the world says should make you okay, and none of it matters. None of it touches whatever is wrong inside him. And lying there in the dark, one thought begins repeating itself. I cannot live with myself any longer. He has had this thought before. But tonight, something different happens. Tonight, instead of drowning in the despair behind those words, he suddenly notices the words themselves. I cannot live with myself. And a strange question surfaces. If I cannot live with myself, how many of me are there? There is the I, and there is the self that I cannot live with. If those are two different things, maybe only one of them is real. Now that might sound like a small observation, wordplay almost. But for Eckhart Tolle, that thought detonated like a bomb inside his consciousness. He describes what happened next like being pulled into a vortex. His mind, the thing that had been torturing him for decades, simply stopped. Not because he forced it, not through meditation or willpower, but because something deeper than the mind noticed the mind. And in that noticing, the whole structure collapsed. He felt himself being sucked into what he calls a void. His body shook. Fear surged through him. And then he heard something, not from outside, but from within his own chest. 2 words, resist nothing, and he let go. He fell into the void, and he has no memory of what happened after that. He woke up to the sound of a bird outside the window, and here is how he describes it. He had never truly heard a bird before. The sound was so pure, so alive, that he says if a diamond could make a sound, that is what it would be like. He opened his eyes. Light was filtering through the curtains, and he knew, without thinking, without analyzing, that there is infinitely more to light than we realize. That soft glow coming through the fabric was not just photons. It was, in his words, love itself. He got up and walked around the room. He recognized it, but he felt as though he had never truly seen it before. He picked up a pencil, an empty bottle, and he marveled at the beauty of them. A pencil, an empty bottle, and he was marveling. That day, he walked through the city in what he describes as utter amazement at the miracle of life on earth, as if he had just been born. For the next 5 months, he lived in a state of uninterrupted deep peace and bliss. After that, it settled somewhat, not because it disappeared, but because it became his normal state. The background noise of anxiety was gone. The running commentary in his head was gone. What was left was a kind of stillness that had always been there underneath everything. He just had never been quiet enough to notice it. And then something else happened. He lost everything on the external level. No job, no relationships, no home, no socially defined identity. For almost 2 years, he sat on park benches, not because he was homeless in the way we usually think of it, but because the bliss was so deep that he did not need anything else. Now, I am not telling you this story so you think you need to have a breakdown to wake up. Tolle himself says his experience was extreme and that it does not have to happen that way. But the reason this story matters, the reason this book exists, is because of what he figured out afterward, when he went back and tried to understand what had actually happened to him. And what he concluded was this: for 29 years, his consciousness had been completely trapped inside his thinking mind. His identity, his sense of who he was, came entirely from his thoughts, his fears, his judgments, his interpretations of the past, his anxieties about the future. He was not a person who had thoughts. He was his thoughts, and those thoughts were destroying him. That night, the pressure of suffering became so intense that his consciousness was forced to separate from the mind, to withdraw from the fiction. And when it did, when the false self built out of thinking collapsed, what was left was not emptiness. What was left was what had been there all along, underneath the noise. He puts this idea in a parable early in the book, and it is one of those stories that sticks with you. A beggar has been sitting by the side of a road for over 30 years. Every day strangers pass by, and he holds out his old baseball cap. Spare some change, spare some change. One day, a stranger walks up. The beggar holds out his cap, and the stranger says, "I have nothing to give you." But then he looks down and asks, "What is that you are sitting on?" The beggar shrugs. "Nothing, just an old box. I have been sitting on it for as long as I can remember." Have you ever looked inside? No. What would be the point? There is nothing in there. Have a look inside. The beggar pries open the lid, and inside, the box is filled with gold. Tolle says, "I am that stranger. I have nothing to give you. I am only telling you to look inside, not inside a box, somewhere closer, inside yourself." And that is the premise of the entire book, that what you have been searching for, peace, fulfillment, the feeling that you are finally okay, is not something you need to earn, achieve, or find in the future. It is already here, right now. Buried under decades of mental noise, the question is whether you are willing to stop digging everywhere else and finally open the box you have been sitting on your entire life. But to do that, you first need to understand the thing that is keeping you from it. The thing Tolle says is the single greatest obstacle to everything you actually want, and that thing is your own mind. Chapter 2. You are not your mind. Picture someone walking down a busy street, muttering to themselves, talking out loud, arguing with nobody, gesturing at the air. You see them and you think, something is wrong with that person. But here is the thing Tolle points out, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. The only difference between that person and you is that you do it silently. Right now, right this second, there is a voice in your head. It is commenting on what I am saying. It is agreeing or disagreeing. It is thinking about something that happened earlier today or something you need to do later. It is narrating your experience like an uninvited sportscaster who never shuts up. And here is the question Tolle asks that changes everything. Have you ever tried to stop it, not redirect it, not focus it on something productive? Actually stop it. Find the off button. You cannot. And that, he says, is the problem. Not that thinking exists. Thinking is a beautiful tool. Your mind can solve equations, plan a trip, build a bridge, write a symphony. The mind is extraordinary when it is used for what it was designed for. Specific tasks that require logic, analysis, and creativity. But that is maybe 10 or 15% of your thinking. The rest, the 80–90%, is involuntary. It is repetitive, it is compulsive, and if you actually stop and observe it, much of it is negative. It is worry, it is judgment, it is replaying old conversations, it is rehearsing future arguments. It is the voice that tells you that you are not good enough, not far enough along, not doing it right. Tolle compares it to an addiction, and it fits. An addiction is anything you no longer feel you have a choice to stop. You get a false sense of pleasure from it, the satisfaction of being right, the comfort of worrying because it feels like you are doing something, but that pleasure always turns into pain. And then he drops one of the most provocative lines in the book. He brings up Descartes, the philosopher famous for one sentence: "I think, therefore I am." Tolle says that is not a profound truth. It is the most fundamental error anyone has ever made because it equates thinking with existing. It says that who you are is your thoughts, and the moment you believe that, the moment your entire identity is built on the content of your mind, you become a prisoner of it. Think about what that means practically. If you believe you are your thoughts, then every negative thought feels like a statement about who you are. Every worry becomes your worry. Every judgment becomes your judgment. Every fear becomes personal. But what if those thoughts are not you? What if they are just weather, passing through a sky that remains unchanged behind them? This is not philosophy for its own sake. Tolle is making a practical point. He says that the moment you realize you are not the voice in your head, that you are the one who hears it, everything shifts. He calls it watching the thinker, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You step back and you listen to your own thoughts, the way you would listen to a stranger talking at the next table, without judgment, without getting involved, just noticing. And something strange happens when you do this. You become aware of two things at once. There is the thought and there is you, the awareness behind the thought. The fact that you can observe a thought proves that you are not that thought. There is something deeper, something quieter, something that was there before the thought arose and remains after the thought passes. That quiet awareness, that is what Tolle calls your true self, not the voice, the silence underneath it. Now, most people have experienced this for maybe half a second at a time. A moment on a beach at sunset where the commentary just stopped. A split second after hearing incredibly beautiful music. A flash during intense physical effort where you were so completely in your body that your mind went quiet. Tolle says those were not random. Those were glimpses of your natural state. The state that is always there but gets buried under the noise. And he makes a distinction that is easy to miss but changes how you think about emotions, happiness, all of it. He says there are emotions, which are the mind's reactions reflected in the body. Anger, jealousy, anxiety, resentment. These come from thinking. They are part of the mental noise. And then there are deeper states, love, joy, peace, that do not come from thinking at all. They arise when thinking stops. They are not emotions in the usual sense. They have no opposite. Real joy does not turn into sadness. Real peace does not turn into anxiety. They are what is left when the mind gets out of the way. The problem is that most people have never experienced this for more than a few seconds, because the mind always rushes back in. The commentary starts up again. The noise returns. And this is where Tolle introduces something that, for a lot of people, becomes the most unforgettable idea in the entire book. Chapter 3. The thing that feeds on your pain. Imagine you are having a perfectly fine evening. You are relaxed. Maybe you are cooking dinner, listening to music. Everything is calm, and then your partner walks in and says something. Maybe it is a comment about how you loaded the dishwasher. Maybe it is a tone of voice. Something small. Something that, on paper, should not matter at all. And suddenly you are furious. Not mildly irritated, genuinely angry. The kind of anger that feels bigger than the moment. Disproportionate. Like something ancient woke up inside you and took the wheel. You have felt this before. Everyone has. The reaction that does not match the situation. The wave of sadness or rage or anxiety that comes out of nowhere and hijacks your entire evening. Tolle has a name for what is happening. He calls it the pain body. Now, before you dismiss the term as too spiritual or too abstract, hear what he actually means by it, because it is one of the most practically useful concepts in the book. Every time you experience emotional pain and you do not fully process it, do not fully feel it, acknowledge it and let it move through you, a residue of that pain stays. It lodges in your mind and in your body, not metaphorically. You can feel it as tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, a heaviness you carry around that you have gotten so used to, you think it is just how life feels. Over years and decades, this accumulated pain forms a kind of energy field. And Tolle says it behaves almost like a living thing. It has a dormant state and an active state. Most of the time it sleeps, but it needs to feed. And what does it feed on? More pain. So the pain body, this accumulated residue of old suffering, periodically wakes up. And when it does, it looks for food. It needs you to think painful thoughts. It needs you to start an argument. It needs you to dwell on something someone said 3 years ago that still stings. It needs drama, conflict, negativity, because that is the only thing that keeps it alive. And here is the part that makes people uncomfortable. When the pain body is active, it does not announce itself. It does not say, "Hello, I am your accumulated emotional pain from the last 20 years, and I am about to ruin your Tuesday." It pretends to be you. It takes over your thinking. It takes over your emotions. It looks through your eyes and it sees threats everywhere. It finds reasons to be offended. It finds reasons to feel like a victim. And you, the real you, the awareness underneath, get pulled into total identification with it. You become the anger. You become the sadness. You become the resentment. And you act from that place. You say things you do not mean. You make decisions that hurt you. You push people away or you attack them. And then later, when the pain body goes dormant again, you look back and think, "Why did I do that? That was not like me." And you are right. It was not like you. It was the pain body using you. Now, does this mean you're not responsible? No, Tolle is clear about that. The pain body operates through unconsciousness. The moment you become conscious of it, the moment you recognize that what is happening is old pain feeding on new pain, the identification breaks. You are no longer it. You are the one watching it, and that watching is enough. He uses a powerful image. He says the pain body is like a shadow. It looks solid and terrifying, but it is insubstantial. It cannot survive in the light of your awareness. The moment you bring conscious attention to it, the moment you say, "Oh, this is the pain body, this is old pain looking for food," it begins to dissolve. Not instantly. It has momentum, like a spinning wheel that keeps turning after you stop pushing it. But it begins to lose power. And then he tells a story that might be the simplest and most memorable illustration of what freedom from this pattern looks like. He says he spent time observing ducks. 2 ducks would sometimes get into a fight, feathers flying, wings beating, real aggression. And then, after a few seconds, the fight would end. The ducks would separate, swim in opposite directions, and vigorously flap their wings several times. That flapping is the key. They are releasing the surplus energy from the confrontation, shaking it off, physically discharging it so that it does not get trapped in their bodies, and then they swim on, peacefully, as if the fight never happened, because for them, it did not happen. There is no mental story about it, no replaying, no resentment, no narrative about how the other duck disrespected them. No duck has ever lain awake at 3 in the morning thinking about what it should have said to the other duck. But you have lain awake replaying a conversation from 6 months ago. You have carried resentment towards someone for years, feeding that old pain every time you think about it. And every time you feed it, the pain body gets a little stronger, a little more entrenched, a little harder to see as anything other than who you are. The ducks do not have this problem because they do not have a mind that keeps the past alive unnecessarily and then builds an identity around it. You do. And that, according to Tolle, is the central challenge of being human. Not that you have a mind, but that your mind has you. So how do you break free? How do you stop feeding something that has been running your inner life for decades? Tolle says the answer is deceptively simple, and it has everything to do with something you have been ignoring your entire life. Time, not the kind on your watch, a different kind. The kind your mind manufactures to keep itself in power. Chapter 4. The Illusion of Time. Let me ask you something. Has anything ever happened to you outside of the present moment? Think about it, not philosophically. Literally, every single experience you have ever had happened now. Every memory you have is something that happened in a present moment that has since passed. Every plan you have made, every worry you have entertained about the future, you were doing that now. When the future arrives, it will arrive as now. When you remember the past, you are remembering it now. There has never been a time when your life was not this moment, and there never will be. Tolle says this is not a spiritual concept. It is a fact, the most obvious, hiding in plain sight fact of human existence. And yet almost nobody lives as though it is true, because the mind cannot operate in the present moment. Think about what the mind actually does. It compares, it judges, it plans, it remembers, it projects. Every single one of those functions requires time, either the past or the future. Without time, the mind has nothing to grab onto. It goes still, and a still mind feels like death to the ego. So the mind does something extraordinarily clever. It convinces you that the present moment is not enough, that the good stuff is somewhere else, that you need to get through this moment in order to reach a better one. And you believe it. You live your entire life leaning forward. I will be happy when I get the promotion. I will be at peace when the debt is paid off. I will feel fulfilled when I find the right relationship. Everything is a means to an end. The present is just the annoying gap between where you are and where you want to be. Tolle calls this psychological time, and he distinguishes it very carefully from what he calls clock time. Clock time is practical. You use clock time when you set an appointment, when you plan a trip, when you learn from a mistake so you do not repeat it. Clock time is fine. Clock time is necessary. Psychological time is when you live in the past or future mentally, when your identity comes from what happened to you or what you hope will happen, when you dwell on regret or chase salvation that is always one more achievement away. And here is the line that stops people in their tracks. All negativity is caused by too much future and not enough presence. All guilt, regret, resentment, and bitterness are caused by too much past and not enough presence. Read that again in your head. Think about the last time you felt anxious. Were you anxious about this exact second, or about something that had not happened yet? Think about the last time you felt guilt or resentment. Were you reacting to something happening right now, or to a story from the past that your mind was replaying? Tolle makes a distinction here that is one of the most practically useful ideas in the entire book. He says there is a difference between your life and your life situation. Your life situation is the collection of circumstances, events, and conditions that exist in time. Your job, your relationship status, your bank account, your health, all of that is your life situation. It exists in the past and future. It is a mental construct. Your life is now. Your life is the actual experience of being alive in this moment. The breath you are taking, the sensation in your body, the awareness behind your thoughts. That is your life, and it is always whole. It is always okay. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because the present moment, stripped of mental labels, is simply what it is. He gives a scenario that drives this home. Imagine someone says, "I am extremely unhappy with my life right now." Tolle would say, "No, you are unhappy with your life situation, and you are confusing the two. Your life situation might be difficult, but your life, this instant, this breath, this moment of awareness, has no problem in it." And then he asks the question that the entire book pivots on. What problem do you have right now? Not tomorrow, not in 10 minutes, right now. When you actually try to answer that, when you narrow your attention down to the pinpoint of this exact moment, you find something startling. There is no problem. There are sensations. There is awareness. There is whatever is in front of you, but the problem is gone. Because problems need time, they need a story, they need a past to explain them, and a future to project them into. Take away the story, take away the time, and all you have is a situation. And situations can be dealt with, accepted, or left, but they cannot make you suffer. Only the story makes you suffer. Tolle tells the story of Carl Jung visiting a Native American reservation. Jung had a conversation with a chief who made an observation about white people that stuck with him. The chief said that most white people have tense faces, staring eyes, and a cruel demeanor. He said they are always seeking something, always uneasy, always restless. And then he said something that Tolle uses as a kind of diagnosis of the entire human condition. We do not know what they want. We think they are mad. That constant seeking, that never-ending feeling that something is missing, that you are not quite there yet, that the next thing will finally be the thing that makes you whole. That is psychological time. That is the mind projecting salvation into the future and refusing to be here now, and it does not matter what you achieve. Tolle points out that you could win $10 million and nothing fundamental would change. You would simply act out the same conditioned patterns in more expensive surroundings. The void would remain because the void is not about what you have. It is about where your attention is. So if time is the trap, if living in the past and future is what creates suffering, then the exit is obvious. Come back to the present. Be here now. But how? How do you actually do that when you have spent your entire life somewhere else? Chapter 5. How to actually get there. This is the part most people skip in spiritual books. The concepts sound beautiful. Be present, watch your thoughts, live in the now. But nobody tells you what that actually looks like at 8:30 on a Wednesday morning when you are late for work and your phone is buzzing and you have not slept well. Tolle does tell you, and it is simpler than you expect. He describes a small experiment, and I want you to try it if you can, not later, right now. Close your eyes, or if you are driving, just shift your attention inward for a moment and say to yourself silently, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And then wait, like a cat watching a mouse hole. Just wait, alert, watching. What happened? If you actually did it, you probably noticed something strange. The thought took a long time to come. As long as you were watching for it, as long as you were alert and present, the thought could not arise. There was a gap, a space of no thought, a few seconds of pure awareness with nothing in it. That gap is what Tolle is talking about. That is presence. That is the now. not an idea about the now, the actual experience of being conscious without the filter of thinking. And the practice, the whole practice, is learning to widen that gap. He gives another image from the Zen tradition. Zen masters were known to sometimes creep up behind their students and suddenly strike them with a stick. If the student was fully present, fully alert, fully rooted in the now, he would sense the master approaching and move aside. If he got hit, it meant he had been lost in thought, absent, somewhere else. Now nobody is going to sneak up behind you with a stick, but life does it all the time. Something unexpected happens, a sharp comment, a sudden problem, a piece of bad news, and it reveals whether you are here or whether you are lost in the machinery of your mind. But Tolle is not asking you to maintain some superhuman state of alertness every second of the day. He is much more practical than that. He gives specific entry points, ordinary moments you can use to practice presence. The first and most important one is your body. Not the body you see in the mirror, the body you feel from the inside. Right now, without moving, can you feel your hands? Not by looking at them, by directing your attention into them. Can you feel a subtle tingling, a warmth, an aliveness? That is what Tolle calls the inner body, and it is one of the most direct pathways into the present moment, because you cannot feel your body from the inside and be lost in thought at the same time. The two are mutually exclusive. Try it with your feet, your arms, your chest. See if you can feel the aliveness in your whole body simultaneously, as a single field of energy. You are not thinking about your body, you are feeling it. There is a difference. Thinking takes you into the mind, feeling anchors you in the now. Tolle suggests making this a background practice throughout your day. Not something you sit down and do for 20 minutes, although that helps too, but something you maintain as a thread of awareness underneath whatever else you are doing. Waiting in line, feel your inner body. Sitting in a meeting, keep part of your attention on the aliveness in your hands. Walking to your car, feel your feet making contact with the ground. Washing your hands, pay attention to the temperature of the water, the sensation on your skin, the sound of the flow. This is not mindfulness as a trendy productivity hack. Tolle is saying something deeper. He is saying that your body is the doorway to a dimension of yourself that your mind cannot access. That underneath the chatter, underneath the pain body, underneath the anxiety and the stories, there is a field of stillness and peace that is always there. And the way in is through physical sensation, through being in your body instead of in your head. He describes the effect like turning up a dimmer switch. The more attention you bring to the inner body, the brighter the light of your consciousness becomes. And in that light, negativity cannot survive. Not because you are fighting it, not because you are suppressing it, but because darkness and light cannot occupy the same space. The second entry point is even simpler: your breath. When the mind is racing so fast that you cannot feel your body, when anxiety or worry has built up so much momentum that trying to observe your thoughts feels impossible, just follow your breath. Feel the air moving in. Feel your abdomen expand. Feel the air moving out. That is all. You are not trying to breathe a certain way. You are just noticing the breath that is already happening. And the third entry point is one people overlook. Tolle says you can use any routine activity as a doorway. Every time you walk upstairs, pay attention to every step. Every time you open a door, feel your hand on the handle. Every time you drink a glass of water, actually taste it. The point is not that these activities are special. The point is that your mind usually treats them as means to an end, things you do on autopilot while thinking about something else. The moment you give them your full attention, they stop being means to an end and become the thing itself. The present moment, the only moment that actually exists. And here is what starts to happen when you practice this. At first, the gaps of presence are tiny, a few seconds here and there before the mind rushes back in. But Tolle says those seconds are enough. Each gap is like a crack in a wall, and through that crack, something shines. a feeling of peace, of aliveness, of quiet joy that has nothing to do with your circumstances. Over time, the gaps get wider, the cracks get bigger, and eventually, not through force, not through willpower, but through the simple act of paying attention, presence becomes your default state, not something you practice, something you are. The peace was always there. You just could not hear it over the noise. Now, everything we have talked about so far might sound like a solo practice, something you do alone in your own head for your own benefit. But Tolle dedicates an entire section of the book to the place where presence is tested the most, where the pain body is triggered the fastest, and where the ego plays its most convincing games. Your relationships. Chapter 6. Why your relationships keep breaking. Think about the last time you fell in love. Not a small crush, the real thing. The kind where the other person fills up your entire world, where everything feels alive and meaningful in a way it did not before, where you look at them and think, this is it. This is what I have been missing. It feels like salvation, like every hole inside you has been filled, like the background hum of anxiety and incompleteness that has followed you your entire life has finally gone quiet. And then, weeks, months, maybe a year later, something shifts. Maybe they say something careless. Maybe they do not respond the way you needed them to. Maybe they are distracted, distant, imperfect in some small and entirely human way. And that feeling, that sense of wholeness you thought they gave you, cracks. And what comes flooding through the crack is not just disappointment. It is rage. It is grief. It is a reaction so disproportionate to what actually happened that some part of you knows this is not about the dishes or the text message they did not return. What just happened? Tolle says that what most people call love is not actually love. It is addiction. And like all addictions, it follows the same cycle. The high, the tolerance, the withdrawal, the desperate search for the next fix. Here is how he breaks it down. And it is uncomfortable because it is so recognizable. Every person walking around with an ego, which is nearly everyone, carries a deep sense of incompleteness, a feeling that something is missing, that they are not quite whole. The ego is a fragile mental construction that needs constant reinforcement from the outside. It needs possessions, achievements, status, approval, but none of those things ever fill the void for long. And then along comes a person, a specific person, and suddenly that void seems to disappear. You have a new center, a new identity. You are no longer a disconnected fragment floating through an uncaring universe. You are someone's partner, someone's other half. You feel whole, but you are not whole. You have just found a very effective drug. And like any drug, it works brilliantly until it does not. Because the moment that person fails to behave in the way your ego needs, the moment they stop being the perfect mirror that reflects back your sense of self, the void returns, and it returns with a vengeance. Because now you do not just feel incomplete, you feel betrayed. The person who was supposed to save you has become the person who is causing your pain. And that, Tolle says, is how love turns into hate overnight. Not because the love was real and then disappeared, but because it was never love in the first place. It was ego need dressed up as love. An ego need has an opposite. Real love does not. He draws a sharp line here that is worth sitting with. He says real love, the kind that does not turn into its opposite, is not something you get from another person. It is not a feeling that depends on someone else's behavior. It is a state of being. It arises from the same place that joy and peace arise, from beneath the mind, from presence, from the stillness that is your true nature. You cannot lose it because it is not coming from outside you. You cannot be threatened by it because it does not depend on someone staying or leaving. It is not selective. It is not exclusive. It is what flows through you when the noise stops and you connect with what is actually there. Now, that might sound like an argument against relationships. It is not. Tolle is not saying relationships are bad or unnecessary. He is saying they are being used for the wrong purpose. Most people enter relationships to escape their own incompleteness, and that guarantees suffering, because no human being can be your salvation. That is too much weight for anyone to carry. But here is the part that makes this chapter more than just diagnosis. Tolle says relationships, especially the difficult ones, especially the ones that trigger you, are actually the most powerful spiritual practice available because they show you exactly where you are still unconscious. He lays out a scenario that will sound familiar to anyone who has been in a long-term relationship. A woman feels that her partner is emotionally absent. He lives in his head. He does not truly listen. He gives her no space to be heard. This is real. She is not imagining it. His lack of presence is a genuine problem, but then her pain body gets activated. And instead of expressing what she feels from a place of clarity, she attacks, she blames, she criticizes, she makes him wrong. And what does he do? He retreats further into his head. He defends, he justifies, he builds a mental fortress. His own pain body activates, and now both of them are gone. Neither one is present. They are two pain bodies attacking each other, using their hosts as weapons. And this cycle, attack, defense, withdrawal, attack, can go on for years, decades, an entire marriage. But Tolle says there is a way out, and it does not require both partners to be enlightened. It only requires one person who in the middle of the cycle chooses to become present instead of reactive. Imagine the same scenario. The woman feels triggered. She feels the pain rising, but instead of letting it take over, instead of becoming the pain, she recognizes it. She says to herself, "This is old pain. This is the pain body waking up." She feels it in her body without acting from it. She breathes, she stays, and then she speaks. Not from reactivity, from clarity. She tells her partner what she is feeling without blame, without accusation, without making him the enemy. There is no guarantee he will hear it. But she has broken the cycle on her end. She is no longer feeding the pattern, and when one person stops feeding the pattern starts to collapse. Tolle puts it simply. He says the greatest catalyst for change in a relationship is complete acceptance of your partner as they are, without needing to judge or change them. Not because their behavior is always acceptable, but because the moment you stop resisting who they are right now, in this instant, you step out of the ego. You make room for something else to come through. Love is not something you find. It is something that enters when you stop blocking it. And blocking it, he says, is exactly what the mind does best. Because the mind needs conflict. The ego needs an enemy. And your partner is the most convenient enemy available. So how do you stop? How do you break a pattern that has been running your relationships and your entire inner life for as long as you can remember? Tolle has one answer, and it is the deepest idea in the book. Chapter 7, The Meaning of Surrender. If there is one word that people misunderstand in this book, it is this one: surrender. It sounds like giving up, like lying down and letting life walk over you, like accepting a terrible situation and doing nothing about it. That is not what Tolle means. Not even close. He gives an analogy that makes it immediately clear. Imagine you are stuck in the mud, deep, up to your knees. You cannot move. Surrender does not mean saying, "Well, I guess I live in the mud now." That is resignation. That is defeat. Surrender means fully accepting that in this moment, right now, you are stuck in the mud, not wishing it were different, not mentally fighting reality, not adding a layer of suffering on top of the situation by telling yourself, "This should not be happening to me." You accept the isness of this moment. And then, from that place of acceptance, from that place of inner stillness, you take action. You do what you can to get out. You call for help. You dig. You try a different angle. But the action comes from clarity, not from panic, not from rage, not from the ego's desperate need for things to be different than they are. This is the core distinction of the entire book. There is a difference between resisting what is and taking action to change it. Resistance is mental. It is the voice in your head saying, "This is wrong. This should not be happening. I cannot believe this." It adds suffering to the situation. Action is practical. It deals with what is in front of you. Surrender removes the resistance. It does not remove the action. Tolle gives another image that brings this to life. He says, imagine you are walking along a path at night, surrounded by thick fog. You cannot see where you came from. You cannot see where you are going. The fog is your life situation, the past, the future, all the things your mind is worried about. But you have a powerful flashlight, and that flashlight cuts a narrow, clear space directly in front of you. The fog is your life situation. The flashlight is your conscious presence. The clear space it creates is the now. You do not need to see the whole path. You do not need to understand the fog. You only need to deal with what is in the beam of the flashlight. And that small circle of clarity is always manageable. You can always cope with the present moment. What you cannot cope with is the story your mind tells about the past and future. But that story is not real. Only the beam is real. Now, surrender sounds easy when we are talking about mud and flashlights. But what about real suffering? What about illness? What about loss? What about the moments when life does not just inconvenience you but devastates you? Tolle does not flinch here. He goes straight at it. He says that when disaster strikes, serious illness, the death of someone you love, the loss of everything you thought defined you, you have two options. You can resist, which means adding the full weight of your mental suffering on top of the physical or situational pain. Or you can surrender to what is, and surrendering to what is does not mean you feel happy about it. He is very clear on this. You may not be happy, you may never be happy about it, but you can be at peace. Underneath the sadness, underneath the grief, there can be a deep stillness, a sacred presence, a knowing that whatever is happening to the form, to the body, to the circumstances, it is not happening to you, not to the deepest you, not to the awareness that was there before the disaster and will be there after. He tells the story of a Zen student named Bonzan, who spent years pursuing enlightenment without success. He studied, he meditated, he did everything he was supposed to do, and nothing happened. Then one day Bonzan was walking through a marketplace, and he overheard a conversation between a butcher and a customer. The customer said, "Give me the best piece of meat you have." And the butcher said, "Every piece of meat I have is the best. There is no piece of meat here that is not the best." And upon hearing that, Bonzan became enlightened. Why? Because in that one sentence, the butcher expressed the essence of surrender. Every moment is the best moment, not because every moment is pleasant, but because every moment is the only moment. And when you fully accept what is, when you stop grading your life on a scale of good and bad, and instead meet each moment as it comes, the war inside you ends. Tolle says there are always two chances to surrender. The first is in the moment itself, accepting the reality of what is happening without mental resistance, saying yes to this instant. But if you miss that, if the reaction takes over, if the pain body activates, if you find yourself deep in suffering, there is a second chance. Surrender to the suffering itself. Do not resist the pain. Do not run from it. Do not numb it with distraction or substances or busyness. Turn toward it. Feel it fully. Give it your complete attention, not your thoughts about it, but the raw sensation of it in your body. And something happens when you do this. The suffering does not destroy you. It transforms. Full attention is full acceptance, and full acceptance is surrender. And surrender is the doorway to a peace that is deeper than anything the mind can manufacture. Tolle calls this the ancient art of alchemy, turning base metal into gold, turning suffering into consciousness, not by escaping the fire, but by letting the fire become fuel for a deeper awakening. And here is what he says to anyone who is thinking, how much longer do I need to suffer before this happens? If you think you need more time, you will get more time and more pain. Time and pain are inseparable. The choice to stop creating suffering is available right now. Not after you figure it out. Not after you read one more book. Not after your circumstances improve. Now, key takeaways. We have covered a lot of ground, so let me pull together the ideas from this book that I think have the most power to actually change how you experience your life. Not someday, but today. The first is this: you are not your mind. That voice in your head, the one that narrates, judges, worries, compares, and replays, is not you. It is a tool, a powerful, useful tool when applied to specific tasks. But somewhere along the way, the tool took over. It started running non-stop, and you forgot that you are not the voice. You are the one who hears it. The moment you step back and observe a thought, instead of being consumed by it, even for 3 seconds, you have accessed something deeper than the mind. You have touched the awareness that exists underneath all the noise, and that awareness is who you actually are. Here is a practical way to test this right now. The next time you catch yourself worrying, try this. Instead of engaging with the worry, instead of following the thread of what could go wrong, just notice it. Say to yourself, there is worry happening, not I am worried. There is worry happening. That tiny shift from being the emotion to observing the emotion is the difference between unconsciousness and presence, between being controlled by the mind and being free of it. The second takeaway: your pain has a pattern and it feeds on you. The pain body is not a metaphor. It is something you can actually feel in your body. That heaviness, that tightness, that familiar wave of negativity that seems to rise up from nowhere and take over your thoughts and your behavior. It wakes up when something triggers old pain, a tone of voice, a feeling of rejection, a situation that echoes something from years ago. And when it wakes up, it is hungry. It wants you to think painful thoughts, start arguments, dwell on resentment, feel like a victim, because that is how it stays alive. The key, the only key, is to see it when it activates. The moment you recognize that what is happening is not a rational response to the present moment, but an old pattern feeding on new fuel, the identification breaks. You are no longer the pain. You are the awareness watching the pain. And in that watching, it begins to lose its grip. Remember the ducks. They fight, they flap their wings, they swim on. They do not build an identity out of the conflict. You can learn to do the same. The third takeaway: you have never had a problem in the present moment. This is the idea that sounds the most radical and turns out to be the most practically true. Problems require time. They require a past to explain them and a future to project them into. Strip away the narrative, strip away the mental labels of good and bad, and what you are left with is a situation. Something to be dealt with, accepted, or walked away from. The next time you feel overwhelmed, try narrowing your attention to the smallest possible frame. Not the next month, not the next week, not even tomorrow. What is in front of you right now? What is the one thing you can do in this moment? You will find that the present moment is always manageable. The overwhelm was never about now. It was about the mind projecting itself into a future it cannot control and calling that projection reality. The fourth takeaway: your relationships are your mirror. Every time your partner, your friend, your coworker, your parent triggers a strong emotional reaction in you, that is information, not about them, about you, about where you are still unconscious, about which pain patterns are still running beneath the surface. This does not mean you accept bad behavior. It means you stop using other people's unconsciousness as an excuse to become unconscious yourself. You can say no to someone clearly and firmly, without resentment, without hostility, without making them the villain in your mental story. That is what Tolle calls a high-quality no, a no that comes from clarity, not from pain. And if you are in a relationship that keeps cycling between closeness and conflict, between love and resentment, ask yourself honestly, are you looking to this person to fill a void that only presence can fill? Are you asking another human being to be your salvation? Because if you are, the cycle will not stop. Not with this partner and not with the next one. The void is not a relationship problem. It is a presence problem. The fifth takeaway: surrender is not weakness. It is the doorway to everything. Surrender means dropping the mental resistance to what is already happening, not agreeing with it, not liking it, not passively accepting a situation you have the power to change. It means stopping the war between your mind and reality, because that war is the source of almost all your suffering, not the situation, the resistance to the situation. When you stop resisting, when you fully accept this moment as it is, even if this moment is painful, something extraordinary happens. The pain does not disappear, but the suffering around the pain dissolves. There is the raw experience, and then there is space, stillness, a peace that your mind cannot manufacture because your mind is what was blocking it. Tolle says it beautifully. He says that the present moment is sometimes unacceptable, unpleasant, or awful. And then he says, it is as it is. Accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with it, not against it. Make it your friend and ally, not your enemy. And that brings us to the idea underneath all the other ideas. The one that Tolle keeps coming back to on every page, in every chapter, from every angle. The present moment is all you ever have. It is the only thing that is real. Everything else, every regret, every worry, every plan, every fantasy, is a mental construction, a story, useful sometimes, destructive often, but never ever the thing itself. The thing itself is here. It is now. It is this breath, this sound, this awareness, and it has been waiting for you your entire life. One say, you know, at the beginning of this, I asked you a question that probably sounded ridiculous. What if you have never actually had a problem? After spending this time inside Tolle's framework, after looking at the mechanics of the mind, the pain body, psychological time, the ego's addiction to suffering, I think that question lands differently now. Not because your life has no challenges, it obviously does, but because the suffering you carry, the weight of it, the relentless grinding quality of it, is not coming from those challenges. It is coming from the layer of mental resistance you wrap around them. And that layer is optional. It always was. So here is my question for you. And I am not asking it to be clever. I am asking because I think it is worth sitting with for more than 5 seconds. What would your life feel like if you stopped arguing with reality? Not if your circumstances changed. Not if you got the thing you think you need. But if you, right now, today, with everything exactly as it is, simply stopped fighting what is and started being present for it. I think most of us have no idea because we have never tried, not for more than a few seconds. The mind always pulls us back. The story always resumes. But Tolle's whole point is that the few seconds count, the gaps matter, and every time you come back, every time you notice you are lost in thought and choose to return to this moment, the gap gets a little wider, the light gets a little brighter, and something that was always there starts to become visible. If this book resonated with you, if something in the last hour made you pause and think, I want to go deeper, I would genuinely recommend picking up a copy of The Power of Now. The link to grab it on Amazon or listen to it on Audible is in the description below. There is a quality to Tolle's writing, a rhythm, a slowness, a depth that rewards reading it slowly, a few pages at a time, with presence. It is not a book you consume, it is a book you absorb. If you found value in this, subscribe to the channel. I have a deep dive on the power of habit coming soon, the science behind why we do what we do on autopilot, and how to rewire those patterns. It pairs well with what we talked about today, approaching the same questions from a completely different angle. Drop your answer to that question in the comments. What would your life feel like if you stopped arguing with reality? I am genuinely curious. I read every single one, and remember, you are always one book away